Unbeknownst to most people, including the people who are actually living in the area, scientists have begun to conduct a secret experiment which involves shooting aerosols up into the sky in the hope of preventing global warming. Specifically, this is a solar geoengineering experiment right outside of San Francisco that's trying to create brighter clouds that would, in theory at least, reflect more sunlight away from the Earth. Here's how the experiment was described 4 days ago in the pages of Scientific American. Quote, "The nation's first outdoor test to limit global warming by increasing cloud cover launched Tuesday from the deck of a decommissioned aircraft carrier in the San Francisco Bay. The experiment, which organizers did not widely announce to avoid public backlash, marks the acceleration of a contentious field of research known as solar radiation modification. The concept involves shooting substances such as aerosols into the sky to reflect sunlight away from the Earth." Now, it really is worth highlighting that this plan was not kept secret by accident. It wasn't that people just did not notice the flyers, or they didn't hear the public service announcements or the social media posts. Instead, the researchers behind this experiment were intentionally keeping the local public in the dark in order to stave off criticism. And the reason we know this is because these researchers, they gave the New York Times exclusive access to cover the initial firing of these spray cannons from the ship. And in their report, here's what the New York Times wrote, quote, "The idea of interfering with nature is so contentious that organizers of Tuesday's test kept the details tightly held, concerned that critics would try to stop them. Nothing breeds public confidence more than changing the weather without telling anyone." Regardless, to give you a bit of the specifics, this plan of theirs involves spraying trillions of microscopic salt particles up into the air in an attempt to make clouds more dense. This will, at least in theory, reflect more of the sun's light away from the Earth. Quote, "The Coastal Atmospheric Aerosol Research and Engagement, or CARE project, is using specially built sprayers to shoot trillions of sea salt particles into the sky in an effort to increase the density and reflective capacity of marine clouds." Now, this secretive experiment is being led by researchers affiliated with the University of Washington, and the official name for this project, as was mentioned in this article right here, is the Coastal Atmospheric Aerosol Research and Engagement Project, otherwise known as CARE. And so, with this compassionate sounding name, alongside the fact that these researchers didn't bother to announce their plan to the public in order to avoid backlash, well, I'm sure that there's nothing to worry about. Although, it is really worth mentioning that even among the scientists who think that this is a good idea, there's no consensus that changing the weather like this will not have unintended consequences. Quote, "Solar radiation modification is controversial because widespread use of technologies like marine cloud brightening could alter weather patterns in unclear ways and potentially limit the productivity of fisheries and farms. It could also lead to a catastrophic spike in global temperatures if major geoengineering activities were discontinued before greenhouse gases decreased to manageable levels." And by the way, it's worth mentioning that this plan did not come out of nowhere. For many years, Bill Gates, through his foundation, has been funding this type of research, and also 2 years ago, Joe Biden signed a measure into law which directed the Office of Science and Technology Policy to work alongside NASA on researching climate intervention. Quote, "An article in MIT Technology Review reports the crux of the federal plan is to release tiny particles into the atmosphere that, theoretically, could reflect enough sunlight to slow down the Earth's warming." That is, again, at the federal level. Getting back to this California plan, though, initially, phase 1 of the plan is to release these microscopic particles atop the USS Hornet Sea and Airspace Museum over in Alameda, California, right there in the San Francisco Bay. This phase will go until the end of May. Afterwards, phase 2 will involve shooting these particles on a pier about a mile offshore in a coastal environment. Then, if phase 1 and phase 2 prove successful, well, perhaps the next phase of this geoengineering scheme will be done right in your own backyard.